Mother of the Beast by Micah Atkinson. Fade in. Exterior, field, village outskirts, day. A cloaked and hooded figure dashes across the field. He nears the tree line of a thick forest. In furious pursuit is Manon, a tall, thin man with dark hair and a long, dirty face. Sweat and blood stain his period farmhand garb. The hooded figure disappears into the tree line. At the other end of the field, a young man stumbles behind. Silas. He has the same sharp features as Manon. His dark hair falls in strands over his dirty face. Manon looks back across the field at Silas. Silas, eyes wide. Don't! Manon breathes in, turns, and dashes after the hooded figure into the forest. Silas freezes, mouth agape. He takes off after them, even though he won't catch up. Black. Mother of the Beast. Interior rustic cottage sunrise. A beautiful mother and child sleep facing each other. Arwen is a young mother with long tangles of hair and dark circles under her eyes. Han is a small child bundled in layers of heavy garments. Arwen in voiceover, singing. Want to give you everything. Want to show you love. Want to take away your pain. No, not strong enough. A distinctive, shifting sound is heard, heavy rustling, like wind sucking up wet leaves. Arwen's eyes flutter open as she turns. In the child Han's place now lays an adult man, Conrad, not yet introduced. Later in the morning, Han plays with tied cloth dolls. Arwen wraps a doll that resembles Han, smaller than the other dolls and wrapped in dark garments. Han stuffs berries into his mouth. He holds up a doll that resembles Arwen with long hair and a shawl. Arwen, still in voiceover. Terrible as they are, and gruesome as they may be, you're going to hear these stories, and I'd rather it from me. Arwen holds a double-sided doll. The doll has two faces, and one side has paler white fabric as its skin. Arwen. Beasts. Han, repeating. Beasts. Teeth. Han watches the double-sided doll and repeats. Teeth. Man. Man. Yet still underneath. Arwen turns the doll over, pale side to flesh-colored side. She caresses a scar etched between her neck and her heart. The scar is 3 lines. Together they resemble a claw mark. Interior hidden cave night. A clawed hand takes a charcoal piece from a smoldering fire. The cloaked and hooded figure draws on the cave wall with the charcoal. He adds to a series of symbols and glyphics. The hand is pale and large, with long fingers and talons. A choir of ghostly whispers echo through the cave in an indiscernible dialect, as if blown in by the wind. Red dream sequence. Montage. The figure of Arwen stands alone, silhouetted in red abyss. A man's hand reaches out and rests on her shoulder. A single silhouette writhes and contorts, morphing into silhouettes of many others, both human and animal. The child Han spins in silhouette. The layers of his garments swirl around him. A sharp talon nears the eye of a stoic man. The talon, in silhouette, seems to pierce the eye of the man. Interior Arwen's cottage. Continued. Arwen hands the 2-sided doll to Han. Han gazes down at the dolls positioned together. The Han doll, Arwen doll, and the 2-sided beast doll. Arwen. Once loved by all, till his curse was revealed. Left no choice but to flee. Some wanted him killed. The cottage door opens and daylight streams in. Arwen and Han look up to see Conrad enter. He is tall, brawny, and handsome, bald-headed, with a signature green cloak and an eye patch. Han, still repeating after Arwen. Killed. Conrad approaches with long, heavy footsteps. He kneels by Han and takes up a doll that resembles himself, draped in a green cloak and with an eye patch. Conrad, those who kill out of fear are the more dangerous ones. They forget that nothing is, and that everything becomes. He holds the Conrad doll and the Han doll, then think themselves strong. Arwen takes up a large, heavy basket. Won't be long. She and Conrad share a confidential look. Arwen kneels before Han and takes his face in her hand. Honor your father while I'm away. Han, I will. I try every day. Arwen smiles as Conrad stares into the empty space between them. Han piles more dolls into Conrad's lap as Arwen turns to leave. Conrad watches her go before turning back. Han, my child, a full day of work lies ahead. Conrad eats a few berries as Han crawls back under the blankets. I'd much prefer, as would you, I'm sure, to just return to bed. Conrad, yes, but alas, we cannot. He yanks the blankets off and scoops up Han as the child laughs and wiggles. Exterior, the village. Day. Arwen strides through the village carrying her basket. The other villagers eye her with silent contempt. Arwen avoids their glares. As she passes, the village women whisper to each other. Her hair, her skin, so pale, so thin. Arwen looks straight ahead. She passes Silas. He eyes her with the same contempt. Young farmhands surround Silas. The juvenile group scarfs down breakfast. Farmhand 1, leering. Maybe tonight she'll have a child with me. Farmhand 2. But then, how could one know just whose child it'd be? Silas catches Arwen's sad eyes for a split second. He swats at the other young farmhands. Enough of that, for not everything that's been said is true. And even if it were, what chance have you? Silas sneers as the other boys jab at the sheepish farmhand. Arwen continues and is abruptly approached by Martha. She seems to be around Arwen's age. Her dark hair is pulled into a tight bun, and she speaks short and quick. Arwen? Good morning, Martha. Arwen nods politely but keeps walking. Martha trails along, gnawing on a strip of dried beef. Off to forage in the wood once more? Arwen. Han likes the wild berries and mushrooms from the forest floor. Martha. How is your son, then? Han is hardly ever seen, and with the other children he never plays. Martha raises an eyebrow. Arwen doesn't pay attention. Arwen, confidently. Working with Conrad is how he prefers to spend his days. Martha nods but eyes Arwen incredulously. That really is such a large basket, Arwen. How many wild mushrooms do you intend to pick? Arwen stops, jaw clenched. She finally turns to look at Martha, whose face drops immediately. Enough for you and the whole village. You know, some wild mushrooms make one quite sick. Martha is taken aback, mouth full and eyes wide. Don't speak of Conrad, and don't speak of our son. And don't go searching for beasts, Martha. You may just find one. Arwen turns on her heel and exits. Martha rushes off, presumably to gossip, as Arwen nears the edge of the village. Arwen glances over her shoulder and discreetly drops a ball of twine from her basket onto the ground. The ball rolls off the dirt path and behind a hut. Arwen diverts off the path to retrieve the dropped ball. Now hidden, Arwen checks over her shoulder one last time. She then darts into the forest, disappearing into the brush. Exterior, Conrad's farm, day. Conrad approaches. Han follows closely. Silas is already there. He goes about farm chores. Conrad, greeting. Silas? Silas looks up and wipes his face. Conrad? Conrad nudges the quiet, shy Han. Han, dutifully. Good morning, Silas. Silas nods curtly. He takes a drink of water from a ladle. Under all those garments, you'll suffer from heat. He gestures to Han's layers of clothing. Han: "When I do, I just pour cold water on my feet." He grips the dirt with his bare toes. Silas, to Conrad: "There's work to be done, and the child can only play games." Conrad takes a threatening step toward Silas. "First, he is my son, and second, he has a name." The men glare at each other. Accepting defeat, Silas turns back to Han. "Han, there's a fence to be mended and a garden to plow." Han: "I can tie a good knot. My mother taught me how." Han rushes off to work. Silas turns back to Conrad. "Do you not hear what the others say? The whole village talks, I hear, but I care not." Silas lowers his voice. "Conrad, you need not fear, for you are valued and respected. But Arwen is now disgraced, and Han will never be accepted." Conrad gazes solemnly. He knows this is true. Cut 2. Conrad and Silas turn a slaughtered cow onto its back, preparing to skin it. Han watches from behind them. Conrad: "Han, don't be afraid. It is a bloody sight." He begins cutting. Han stares at the cow for a beat, then cocks his head. Han: "Beneath the skin is so clean and white." Silas takes the knife and cuts away at the skin. He moves too quick. Blood sprays. It crosses the chests of the men, but smears Han in the face. Conrad: "Careful! Slow!" Conrad glances back at Han, who wipes blood from his cheek. "Gets messy sometimes." Conrad turns back to the cow. Han licks the blood from his fingers. Neither of the men notice. Han: "I know." Exterior, forest day. Arwen steps lightly through the forest. She grips the basket and watches all around her, not afraid but searching. Arwen brushes her fingers across the claw scar on her chest. She closes her eyes and breathes in deeply. She hears the distinctive shifting sound behind her. Slowly, Arwen turns to face an undisclosed presence as the indiscernible whispers blow in again on the breeze. Exterior, village square. That night. Silas sits around a fire with the other farmhands. They cook, drink, and laugh rowdily. A few village girls accompany them. Martha is among them. She gestures dramatically, in the middle of a story. "She threatened to poison me. The whole village, everyone. She'd rather kill us all than live with what she's done." The girls gasp and nod in agreement. Girl 1: "Well, if I were in her place, I don't know how I'd live." Girl 2: "With a constant reminder. That bizarre little kid." Farmhand 1: "He is strange, yeah. All those clothes, I mean. Never takes them off." Farmhand 2: "He's probably furry underneath, and howls like a dog." Silas does not participate in the gossip. He throws back the rest of his drink and tosses the cup down. "Oh, let the boy be. He's of no danger to you." The banter ceases abruptly. Martha eyes Silas. "Have you forgotten, Silas? That's what Arwen said, too." The group exchange nervous glances. One of the farmhands smirks. "About her lover, the beast. He won't harm you," she said. And the very next morning, Martha to Silas, "You counted the dead." Silas glares back at her, then looks around the circle. He takes a farmhand's cup and drinks the last of it. He then turns and exits into the darkness beyond the firelight. Martha stares after Silas. She decides to chase after him. Along the path, continuous, Martha catches up to Silas. The fire crackles in the background, and the farmhands' voices can be faintly heard. "Martha! Silas!" She takes hold of Silas' arm and pulls him to a stop. She holds his face in her hands. He sneers down at her. "Silas, I'm sorry. That was wrong of me to say. Terribly." Martha searches Silas's face for an answer. "I too miss him so. Silas's eyes drop. He sways slightly from intoxication. Silas, it's not easy, you know. Every day, working with them, Conrad and now Han. I try to forget. I try to move on. But Martha draws in close to Silas and wraps her arms around his neck. She presses her face to his chest. Oh, Silas, some things we never forget, but that isn't wrong. Silas, I don't know how to feel or how to be strong. They look into each other's eyes, and she kisses him. Interior Conrad's cottage that night. The door opens abruptly as Silas stumbles in. Conrad looks up from his meal at the table. Silas is wet with sweat and sways from too much drink. He sits across from Conrad, where a second meal is set waiting. Conrad watches as the younger man shovels down food. Conrad, gate still needs mending. Silas, any strays? Conrad, could be in the night. Silas brushes strands of greasy hair away from his face. I've sweat all day, Conrad. Whereas you, it seems, would rather be at play. Conrad considers. I must now, too, care for my son. Silas scoffs. Ah, he, yes, the shameful one. Conrad, I am not ashamed. Silas, Arwen is not your wife. So tell me, just who is to be blamed? Conrad's fists tighten. Interior Arwen's cottage, night, simultaneous. Arwen and Han prepare for bed. Han pulls up his blankets and sits on the bed with the tied cloth dolls spread around him. Arwen, are you sure you want nothing to eat? Han, I'm sure. Not hungry. Han takes up the Conrad doll with the green cloak and eye patch. Arwen watches him fiddle with the doll. Han, why doesn't Father sleep in our bed? Arwen sits next to him. Soon no longer will you. Why does he go when the sky turns red? He must care for others too, the animals and the farm. Han, I wish you'd eat something. No. Han lays down and rolls over, his back to Arwen. Arwen's eyes fall. Silence. Interior Conrad's cottage, continued. Conrad and Silas watch each other across the table. Silas, was it worth the scorn or the loss of your eye? He gestures to Conrad's eye patch. Conrad, you don't understand. There are reasons why. Silas, why? Why not go to her now, Conrad? Why hide an offense born in such plain sight? Conrad, to protect her. Silas, her honor? Conrad looks down into his empty bowl. Is it wrong to mourn or be weak in the night? Her husband was taken from her, but she loved him, Silas, and yet she still took another. Conrad suddenly slams a fist on the table and stands. He looks as though he might jump on Silas. Don't attack me because you feel ashamed. What's been done is done. Perhaps you both are to blame. Conrad stands motionless for a beat, then exits. Conrad's room, continuous. Conrad leans against the wall and breathes heavily. He places a hand over his eye patch. He looks more pained than angry. Interior Arwen's cottage, continued. Arwen sits in bed. Han leans against her. She runs fingers through his hair and hums her goodnight song. Arwen, singing. Want to give you everything. Want to show you love. Want to take away your pain. No, not strong enough. Arwen gently lays Han down, now asleep. She gazes at the pale double-sided doll laying on the bed. She sighs softly before laying down herself. After a long beat, still wide awake, Arwen brushes the scar on her chest and breathes in deeply. Interior hidden cave. The cloaked and hooded figure opens his eyes and breathes out slowly. He removes his hood. Reveal Righteous. Righteous resembles a human man for the most part. His long, dark hair falls down over his back. His eyes are luminous and completely white. His skin is smooth and albino. He has an unkempt beard and long, talon-like fingers and claws. He drops a charcoal piece. As it hits the floor, the sound echoes through the cave. The indiscernible whispers begin to swirl through the cave. Charcoal drawings on the cave walls are revealed. Arwen's cottage, continued. Sudden wind picks up. Arwen hears the whispers. They come in through the blustering shutters and from underneath the door. Careful not to wake Han, Arwen slides out of bed. As she does, the Conrad doll falls to the floor. Hayloft, continuous. Arwen carefully climbs the ladder up into the loft of the cottage. Wind rustles outside. Arwen goes to the large window at the far end of the loft and thrusts it open. Thick wind floods the loft. The whispers ride along. The sudden winds force Arwen back. She falls to her knees. The loft is illuminated by the blue glow of the moon. Hidden cave. Righteous stands at the peak of a large boulder, the expanse of the cave before him. The small bonfire flickers below as he sheds his heavy cloak. Contrasted against his pale skin, a dark birthmark in the same place and shape as Arwen's scar. Righteous reaches out his clawed hands. He paws gently through the air in wide strokes, reaching and feeling for something seemingly intangible. The wind and whispers continue. Hayloft. Arwen lays on her back on the wooden floor. The moon highlights her form through the open loft window. As the whispers and wind blow, Arwen runs her hands along her body, as if they were Righteous's hands caressing her. Red dream sequence. In the red abyss, two pairs of hands reach up, meet and caress each other in black silhouette. Arwen's hands are delicate. Righteous's hands are large and clawed. Then the claws morph smoothly into human hands. Suddenly, a third pair of hands reaches in and takes Arwen's. In voiceover, Han's scream echoes through the red abyss. Interior Arwen's cottage. Hayloft. The next morning. Arwen's eyes flutter open. The bright morning sun beams in through the open loft window. She sits up and notices she is clutching the Conrad doll. Arwen gasps and thrusts the doll away before turning. Han? Arwen's cottage, continuous. Arwen descends the ladder back into the main room and finds it empty. The bed is also empty, sheets strewn about. Han? The door is cracked. A small shaft of light spills in onto a pile of bloody garments left on the floor. Arwen's eyes widen. No.